Good evening tonight. We slow down. This morning, we touched Genesis 16 briefly. A quick snapshot, a moment to carry into your day. But now, we sit with it. We go deeper, because some truths aren't meant to be rushed. They're meant to be felt, processed, and allowed to settle into the quiet places of your heart. Genesis 16 is not just a story about Abram, Sarai, and Hagar. It's a mirror, reflects what happens when waiting becomes uncomfortable, when silence feels too long, and when we begin to believe that maybe we need to step in and fix what God has already promised. Sarai had a promise. God said Abram would have descendants beyond number, but time kept moving, and her situation stayed the same. And the longer nothing changed, the louder the pressure became. Because waiting has a way of testing your faith in ways action never will. It's easy to trust God when things are moving. It's harder when everything feels still. So Sarai makes a decision. It's a human decision, a logical decision. A decision that makes sense on paper but ignores God's timing. She gives Hagar to Abram, hoping to force the promise into reality. And isn't that something we still do today? We try to help God. We create our own timelines. We build our own outcomes, and we call it wisdom. And sometimes it's just impatience, dressed up as strategy. And the result? Tension, broken trust, emotional pain. What was meant to solve a problem becomes the source of a deeper one. Because when we step ahead of God, we often step into consequences we didn't plan for. But what makes this chapter so powerful? It's not just the mistake. It's who God chooses to meet in the middle of it. Hagar, she didn't start this. She didn't ask for this. She was placed into a situation beyond her control. And when everything begins to fall apart, she's the one who suffers the most. She's mistreated, overlooked, pushed aside. Eventually she runs. And now we find her in a place many people quietly understand. The wilderness. The wilderness isn't just a location. It's a feeling. It's that place where you feel alone, unseen, and disconnected. It's where you go when life becomes too heavy to carry in the same environment that hurt you. And here's what's powerful. God meets her there. Not in a palace. Not in a place of comfort. Not when everything is fixed, but in the middle of her pain. The angel of the Lord finds her by a spring of water. And the first thing he does is ask her a question. Where did you come from? And where are you going? That question is deeper than it sounds. Because sometimes, before God changes your situation, he wants you to understand your position. He wants you to reflect, to recognize what you're running from and what you're running toward. And then God does something that changes everything. He speaks to her. He gives her direction. He gives her a promise. He lets her know that her life still has purpose, even after everything she's been through. And in response, Hagar does something no one had done before. She gives God a name. The God who sees me, not the God who sees Abram, not the God who sees the chosen, but the God who sees me in my pain, my confusion, in my lowest moment. That's the heart of this chapter, because if we're honest, many people don't struggle with whether God exists. They struggle with whether God sees them. Genesis 16 answers that question clearly. He sees you when you're overlooked. He sees you when you're carrying pain you didn't create. He sees you when you're in a season that doesn't make sense. He sees you when you're tired of waiting. Maybe tonight that's exactly where you are. Maybe you've been trying to hold it together all day. Maybe you've been carrying something heavy quietly. Maybe you've been questioning whether things will ever shift, ever change, ever make sense. And tonight, God meets you in that place, not after you fix everything, not after you figure it out, but right here, in this moment. And here's the second layer of this story that we can't ignore. Abram believed God in Genesis 15. The stars, the promise, the covenant. He believed, and yet in Genesis 16, still participates in a decision that wasn't aligned with God's plan. Which reminds us of something important. Faith doesn't mean you won't have moments of weakness. Trust doesn't mean you won't struggle with timing. Even people who believe God sometimes wrestle with waiting on him, but God doesn't abandon them. He doesn't abandon you. He still works through imperfect moments, still brings purpose out of complicated situations. He still sees you, even when you didn't handle everything perfectly. So tonight, as you prepare to rest, let this settle into your spirit. You don't have to force what God has promised. You don't have to rush what God is building. You don't have to carry what God never asked you to control. Your role is not to manufacture the promise. Your role is to trust the one who made it. And if you've found yourself in a wilderness season, don't see it as abandonment. See it as a place where God meets people personally. Because some of the deepest encounters with God don't happen in comfort. They happen in stillness, in quiet, in places where everything else has been stripped away. So tonight, release the pressure, release the timeline, release the need to figure everything out right now. Rest in this truth. The God who saw Hagar sees you. The God who met her in the wilderness meets you in yours. And the God who made the promise, fulfill it in his time. You are not unseen or not forgotten, and you are not alone. As we close tonight, let this truth settle gently into your heart. The God who saw Hagar sees you right where you are, just as you are. You don't have to carry everything into tomorrow. Release the weight, quiet your mind, and rest in his presence. He is near, he is faithful, and he has not forgotten you. If this spoke to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what resonated with you tonight. Sleep peacefully, rest deeply, have a blessed good night.